And it's welcome back to We Love Ugly Data, the Deep Analysis podcast. This is episode 35, and it is series 5, not, as I said last time, series 4. Series 5, this time episode 2. With me is Alan. Hi, Alan.
Hello.
You're wrapped up for the warm there. It's starting to defrost in Philadelphia a little bit.
It is starting to defrost in Philadelphia, but depending on who you listen to, and I don't know that's reliable, but probably the worst winter in 30 years. Yeah.
Okay, well, here in my little corner of Kent by the seaside, it has rained every day since New Year's Day, more or less. It certainly feels like that. So, yeah, we're having our different versions of extreme weather. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the format, first of all, because part of the format of the podcast, as you know, is talking about the format of the podcast. So here is the format of the podcast. Format, 3 topics, 30 minutes. You know, time. It's an ethereal concept. We don't necessarily keep to it, but we try to. I have a stopwatch, believe it or not, which I do occasionally look at to see how far we are off, but we do try to keep to that 30 minutes. And certainly we keep to the 3 topics. This month, I was originally, when I was putting the running order together last week for this, going to put up a message saying Matt might swear during this because I knew what the running order is. I think I've calmed down since I started to compile it, but we'll get to the thing that makes me angry in a bit. Well, you know, the first 2 topics both have an element of grinding my gears a little bit, but the second one in particular. But we'll get to that. So we'll look out for that. We start to see me get even more red-faced than normal. But the first topic. Now, if you were with us last January, so that will be 13 episodes ago, if my mathematics is correct, we did a whole software is dead thing. And the first topic today is software is dead again. So just to refresh your memory, back last January, there was all software is going to disappear because all it is a bunch of crud attached to a database, and that can easily be replicated by AI. So that's, you know, all software is kind of dead. And who was the person saying this? It was Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. You probably should have known better. But for a few weeks, the conversation, the discourse, should we say, in LinkedIn and in other social networks was that, you know, software is dead, software is over, and then by about middle of February, everybody forgot about it again. But it is back. It is primarily back. I'm not going to get into the specifics of why it is back in a huge amount of detail, but to summarize, at least my summarization, Anthropic, AI company, released some, let's just call them good demos, which people saw and absolutely lost their minds with the output again that all software is dead, all SaaS software is dead, the way in which we procure software must change, everything is blown up again. But Alan wrote something that was a little bit more sober. So let's structure a little bit some of these things. I'm not going to try and take on the whole topic, but we're going to take on a little bit of that topic. Alan, you wrote a blog post that came out this week called Death of SaaS Narrative is a luxury the enterprise cannot afford, and with the subtitle, the death of SaaS has been greatly exaggerated. It is not dying; it is simply evolving. And evolution, as any enterprise knows, takes time. Discuss.
Yeah, I mean, so it's this thing, right? I mean, we try very, very hard at Deep Analysis. I'm sure other analyst companies do too, by the way, but you know, particularly when you're at conferences and you're on the road, and we are a lot, you know, the big goal is to go and talk to the customers, right? Because sounds a little arrogant, but we can talk to the product managers and the executives anytime. We don't get a chance so often to spend, you know, quality time with buyers. And every time you do, you just brought back down to earth, right? And it's such a disconnect, and we've talked about the disconnect so many times. But here's the thing: why did you know? What's one of my standard questions? All right. So why did you choose this software? Why did you choose Salesforce? Why did you choose Ignite? Why did you choose Highland? Right. It's just a box standard question. And, you know, honestly, at the end of the day, the answers fall into pretty much the same bucket. And it's a combination of we liked them, seriously, right? You know, they came in, we thought we can work with these people, right? So it wasn't technology. I mean, yes, the technology can do the job, but they're not daft to think only that vendor can provide a technological solution. And to pricing, right? Pricing. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not always the cheapest. It's often the most trustworthy, reliable, predictable pricing that's within their budget. Yeah.
Yep.
So you get away from the AI hype, you get down to the reality. It's the same as if you buy a car. You know, we bought a car last year. I mean, our old one needed to go. And, you know, so we looked at lots of cars. What did we end up buying? The one we liked from a dealer we liked at a price we could afford. And it's the same thing with enterprise software. So when you get into pricing, the craziest things at the moment is people saying, oh, well, you know, subscription-based cloud pricing replaced perpetual plus maintenance licensing for on-premise software. No, it didn't. Why are people saying that out loud? It is literally not true. It didn't replace it. It came along and it runs alongside it. There's lots of people paying for perpetual licenses or one-off licenses, if you want to put it that way, plus maintenance fees year on year.
Well,
right?
so let's get into the specific myths you talk about then in the piece, so we can keep this in. So up on screen we've got like myth 1. You talk about the maintenance plus seat model is a relic of the past. That's a myth, and you said that's the most kind of I think that's kind of the egregious error that you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you look at it, I mean, you know, if you don't believe me, then look through the financial statements of SAP, Oracle, OpenText in our world, right? Mm-hmm. It's just not true, right? Is more stuff moving to the cloud? Sure it is, but it's been moving to the cloud for the best part of 20 years. These things take a long, long, long time. And when you're going to introduce a new pricing model, oh, you're only going to pay for what you use, or you're only going to pay per transaction or per action that's performed or whatever. Yeah, maybe it's going to be appealing to some people, but that is going to take years to work through procurement, to work through IT, to get sign off from a CFO, and it involves a huge amount of risk and inertia.
The reason why, I mean, we've always talked. I don't think we have, but there's an assumption that SaaS or cloud provision software and per seat licenses are somehow linked. They are not linked in anything other than they were trends that seem to happen at a similar time. There is no reason why you cannot have a perpetual license based on a cloud procured a piece of software. The difference is, of course, you're not just renting the software, as you always were, you're renting the hosting for the software too. So that's why it tended, as those costs are not fixed for the supplier over the length of the contract, why they wanted to do it on a per seat basis, because it gives better control over those margins, right? So it's not that they are connected, it just was a better margin control for the software companies.
And it comes back to two things. Use two words here: control and inertia, right? Yeah. People want control over things, right? And rightly so. They have a budget. And they need to control the budget. So when you bring in variable pricing, okay, that's not cool, right? Potentially not cool at all. But then there's just inertia. Like I said, it just takes a very long time. Why should I change? What's in it for me? And at the moment, there doesn't seem to be much in it. Now, we can argue that, the new models, which are the consumption-based models, make sense. And they do make sense for some things. We're not against them.
Yeah, for some things.
Some things they make perfectly good sense. If they are predictable. Mm-hmm. They need to be predictable within a certain sort of bandwidth, right? If I've got a budget of 500, that's $500,000, $500, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. If there is a decent chance it's going to come in at 700, I'm not touching it. Yeah. I don't have budget for it, right? Yeah. And let's not lie about this. Let's be honest. Why do software vendors like Salesforce and ServiceNow and Microsoft, they want to make more money? How do you make more money? By charging more.
Well, I mean, I think at the same time, let's be fair. They also want a predictable amount of money they're making. Now, during the period of time when they are also often providing these things in arbitrage over things that they don't control, particularly with services like AI that they are buying in, right? They don't know over a 5 or 7 year contract that they might want to take out with a customer what the unit price is going to be in that period of time. So they want some ability to be able to keep their margins within an acceptable, within probably a shareholder acceptable amount. So they're trying to protect their margins. And as we talked about on this pod, previously, I've listened to customers explaining more recently over AI services that when they've tried to work out the costs in production, they haven't been able to. They've taken it to their vendor, and their vendor hasn't been able to work it to either. The idea was, well, you should just wait till the invoice comes, and that's what it costs. That's not really an acceptable way of doing financial planning for any sensible organization if you're trying to control costs.
No, and so there's two things here. One, you just hit on it, and that's why I use the example of a car. When you talk to people who've got huge IT budget, it's no different to a personal budget. It's no different, right? They know there's X amount coming in to spend. They know they need X, Y, and Z because they can't operate without it. And then there's a little bit that's variable, and that's just like life, right? So you've got to work within those parameters. But the crazy thing here anyway, and the reason I sort of wrote this, was that the crazy volatility, the crashing of stock prices based on a few memes, which is what they are ultimately, right? That go viral on LinkedIn is nuts, because even if we totally buy into the consumption-based pricing model for SaaS or software and enterprise software in general, buddy, it's going to take decades. It's going to take years and years for this to work its way slowly through the system. So why do we have one-day crashes?
Well, for those of you who are interested in that particular subject, particularly subscribers, I'm talking to subscribers here, the CREW document, the client research update for the first quarter of this year, I'm starting to write that now. We will be covering, because of course we have the DA index within that, which is our own synthetic stock market. You will understand that it's been quite an interesting couple of months for the DA index. So we'll be covering this in a little bit more detail in the CREW for subscribers, and that will be with you in March, because obviously it covers up for until the end of February is the period where we cover the data for. So we have just come back on the myths up on screen for people who are watching this. We've covered myth 1, the maintenance plus seat model. Myth 2, SaaS subscriptions are fickle and easy to cancel. Now, because anybody who's had, I don't know, a cable subscription or a broadband subscription or a Spotify subscription will know, well, even with consumer contracts, you have to hit them at the right point within a cancellation period. You often got terms that prevent you from changing that. Enterprise contracts are no different. You can't just flick them on and off. Plus, the penalties for doing so are often high, and they are something that you are planning 1 or 2 or 3 years out to go for SaaS contract about how you're going to deal with that renegotiation. So, a bit like something we'll come on to into a moment, which is, enterprises don't work from a blank sheet of paper. You can't just simply shake off an M6365 contract for 5,000 employees and just move everything over. However simple you might think that is, it's far more complicated than that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When we cast the clock back to when you and I, for example, were at 451, when cloud was getting I mean, not that it was new then, this is over 10 years ago, but not that it was new then, but it was getting a real push. And one of the big selling points was you can just switch it on and off. It's elastic. You only pay for what you need. Listen, nobody buys that anymore. No enterprise buys that story anymore. It costs serious money to move off. Once you're committed, I should say, to a platform, like whether you're committed to Salesforce or Box for that matter, it doesn't matter. Once you're committed to them, I mean, you can switch it off, but then you lose everything.
Right. And you're absolutely right.
You're going to have to migrate. There's cost in migration. There's risks in. Fact is, it comes back to that thing about inertia. It's got to be a damn good reason, a really powerful reason to get off and take the risk and the cost of doing so. And it's seldom ever there, frankly.
Right. And in that vein of, the world is significantly more complicated than you might think it is. And certainly your argument about why don't you simply do this or simply do that is often predicated on a blank sheet of paper being an option. Up on screen is a post that I put out actually a few days before the post of Alan's that we just discussed about, where I said, you know, need to beware the promises made by blank sheets of paper. There's an awful lot of, well, just simply, I would just simply deploy this, I would just simply deploy that. And it's not just I keep thinking about the concept of legacy. There's the fact that just enterprise operations, forget technology, forget legacy data, forget legacy software. Just think about the complexity of running an organization. There's a tendency, and this is something which is, I think, specifically within the software industry, is to think that the software industry is like a template, that everything works like the software industry, right? It doesn't. And you can trust us on the basis that we've been doing some sectoral analysis on just 3 industries for a client first couple of months of this year. Not unusual industries, but just working out how they, laying out how they operate, the workflows in which they operate. It's enormously complicated. There's similarities, but I can guess, of those 3 you've been looking at, not one of them is like the software industry in any single individual way. So, so that's covered a little bit inside that post. And again, I think I'll probably cover a little bit in the crew as well. Also in that post of mine is a little bit about how customers are in some cases holding AI to the perimeter. So allowing AI tools to be deployed, but keeping them well away from any big integrations and keeping them well away from any big data integrations, because the risk of doing it and the complexity of doing it at the moment can't be justified by what you're getting in terms of benefit from them. So not to annoy a load of business customers to say, yeah, sure, you can have that thing, and we allow you to do this. I'm not going to go and integrate it into the CRM or the ERP or any other enterprise line of business platforms, because I don't think you want to bear the cost of that, because you haven't really thought about it. And 2, there's the whole governance overhead, which I don't think we're ready to get to yet. So that's the kind of holding things at the perimeter. Again, all links, I should have said this earlier, I got halfway through and we haven't even mentioned it. All the links will be in the show notes. So links to blog posts, links to references, all those other bits and pieces will be in there. And I'm sure we'll be back and software will be dead again sometime this year, maybe early next year, but we'll record it. We'll put a line in the sand. And then talking about line in the sand, this brings on to the second topic this time, which is stupid AI predictions. We should have a jingle. Stupid AI predictions should be like a kind of repeated thing with a jingle. Now, normally, stupid AI predictions are normally made by analyst companies, right? In fact, software companies don't tend to make them. They tend to actually rely on analyst companies to make them for them. So they've got an independent party that will say, this will happen by 2030, or this will happen by 2028, or whatever. And we'll look at the logo of the analyst company, and then they'll say, look, it's not us saying this. It's not us saying it, it's the analyst company. However, not all software companies are smart enough to do that. Some of them are Microsoft. And the FT last week, I've got up on screen here, Mustafa Suleiman, who's head of Microsoft AI. We'll come back to him in a few minutes on where he came from and why this is important. Did an interview with the FT. Now, the argument or the point of the interview actually was to talk about how Microsoft are defocusing from just OpenAI, but actually breaking open, opening themselves up to other models and creating their own from scratch. However, that isn't necessarily the big takeaway that came from the interview. And if you heard about this week, you won't know about that bit. You won't know about the model bit. You'll just know about the prediction. And the prediction, and I'm going to read this out, it's on the screen for people who are looking, but the prediction here, and I quote, white collar work, whether you're sitting down at a computer, either being a lawyer or an accountant or a project manager or a marketing person, most of those tasks will be fully automated by an AI within the next 12 to 18 months. Right, so that's February 2026. We'll come back to this. Let's do what? We'll make a date next February. We'll see how that's going. We'll see how in 12 months' time, because even if we say, well, he said 12 to 18, let's give him a little bit of leeway. If something's going to be pretty much fully automated in 18 months, we would be seeing the signs of it in 12, wouldn't we? Right? In fact, we'd be seeing the signs of it now if it was going to be fully automated in 18 months, but we haven't. However, the other quote he went on to say kind of contradicts the first one, which he said, these AI agents will be able, this isn't a direct quote, this is a paraphrase from the journalist, but so you can bet your bottom dollar if it's not accurate, Microsoft would have pushed back on it. These AI agents, will be able to coordinate better within the workflows of larger institutions in the next 2 to 3 years, he added. The AI tools will also be able to learn and improve over time, taking more autonomous actions, blah, 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 blah. So we've softened it a little bit. We've gone from, everything's going to be fully automated in 18 months, but actually the workflows of the organizations won't be integrated until 2 or 3 years. So what's going to happen in the 18 months between the time everything's going to be automated and not attached to all workflows, God only knows. My suspicion is he's making this up in front of the journalist to show off and has got caught out. This is my guess, because I don't think anybody really would stump up that, because this is a deeply dishonest thing to say. He would know within Microsoft AI that this isn't possible, because if it was possible, he would be seeing it in his frontier customers now. For something to be mainstream in 18 months, it would need to be in production now with their frontier customers, and it is not. I'm going to pause out and have a small sip of my drink to regain my my composure.
No, this is part of being an analyst, and I've been, well, you've been an analyst a long time. I just happen to be the analyst who's been around a very long time. But I mean, I lived through the dot-com boom. That was where I got my start, right? And I've said this a few times now. I mean, some of the crazy stuff that came out of the dot-com boom, yeah, some of it was basically financial crime, and let's not pretend it wasn't. But actually, a lot of it was genuine naivety, in that people were building things, but guess what? People didn't actually have broadband connections. It didn't, I mean, yeah, it was like, there was a great idea, but there wasn't actually the infrastructure to support it. So there was always, it's worse now. It's much worse now. I honestly believe it's much worse now, in the sense that some of this is just blatantly untrue. Now, look, let's give this guy, about credit, but let's give him some leeway and say maybe he really does believe this. Maybe he does. But there's so much of this at the moment. I mean, we just talked about it on the pricing. Yeah. Right. It's let's put it this way: we live in the enterprise software world. Yeah. The enterprise software world, with a few exceptions, is old. It's old. It's been around 30 years, right? Anybody who's ever spent any time in consulting systems integration, they know that they don't know. Now, it sounds like a stupid thing to say, right? But if you're any large organization, the truth is nobody in your organization actually truly understands your IT stack. Most of it's undocumented. Integrations that and lines of code that were written 20 years ago are still right. Nobody knows what's going on. So look, that's just reality. So when you start making bold predictions that this is going to replace this and this is going to replace that, it just does not connect with reality. Yeah. And I'm frankly, right at the moment, I am so sick of it, because again, we'll give the Microsoft guy a bit of leeway here, but I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get sued, but there's plenty that you read in the industry press and on LinkedIn who know full well they're not telling the truth.
Well, Alan, we neither of us are broadcasting from the cities built on Mars, so we know sometimes people predict things that don't happen, and there's no comeback from it. And when there's no comeback from it, but anyway, let's just get a little bit onto it. If you think, hang on a second, you've written about what I said before, we did back in March 2024 when he actually was hired by Microsoft. From Inflection. He actually started at DeepMind. So DeepMind was one of the co-founders of DeepMind, acquired by Google, left Google, created the startup, and then his startup was half bought and half not bought by Microsoft in 2024 to focus on consumer AI. And that's still the focus of the Microsoft AI unit, is consumer AI. So I'm not sure necessarily whether he's talking in his role at Microsoft AI about how businesses are going to be operating with it or not. I don't know, but he was there. But what's interesting, actually, while we're on the subject of predictions, is that particular post I talked about here, creative AI focus on the consumption and the consumer from March 2024. Actually, the subtitle about that was actually talking about burn rates. It's talking about financial burn rates for the hyperscalers and the large software companies, about how much money from their cash piles they were spending on it. And we said, look, they're close to a real-time tracker on what the long game bet to own AI in the market might be costing. So that's March 2024, which I know doesn't sound very long ago, but it's actually almost 2 years ago. That's your light flashing before you. Anyway, flash forward to this week. I'm there on the Everything app X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm still clinging on there because there's still some interesting people on there. And I saw this tweet from Peter Berresin of BCA Research, or an investment research firm, up on screen. And I'll see if I can put it in the crew as well, because it's worth sharing. It's a little graph showing free cash flow for a selected number of software companies: Oracle, Meta, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, from 2016 to 2028, and showing those cash piles diminishing, with the title from him, poof, and it's all gone. So it's indicative, actually, of that those cash piles are, starting to deteriorate, and in some cases, it looks like by Q4 of 2026, a calendar Q4 2026, some companies' free cash flows might have gone entirely. So that's a kind of interesting thing. And just to let Microsoft off the hook ever so slightly, a few days actually before I saw this around the same time, was a headline from Fortune. Ex-Google exec says degrees in law and medicine are a waste of time because they would take so long to complete, but AI will have catch up by the time of graduation. That's Jad Tafali he's the CEO of Integral AI. He's ex-Google. Don't bother studying medicine now. By the time you finished it, we won't need doctors, and we won't need lawyers. If we're talking another prediction, an interesting prediction, I don't really want to test that one. I don't think we really want to test.
Yeah, well, so Matt, last night, this is a true story. My wife was at I'll protect the innocent here, a social event in South Philly with some friends, and people were talking about cardiology and about health issues. And one of them said, "Oh, I just got on ChatGPT." And Sandra, my wife, was saying, "Well, you shouldn't be doing that. You do know I make stuff up." She's quite right. We call them hallucinations, etc. Plausible answers, gives you the answer you want, whatever. Here's the thing: they push back. They just didn't believe that AI could make mistakes.
Okay.
So by the way, he is 100% wrong. Google executive, but these people are not exceptional. There's a lot of people out there who are turning to AI for their healthcare in this country, and it's really scary.
A terrifying vision of things to come, Alan.
Things already with us.
Well, indeed. So that was topic 2. That was stupid AI predictions and scary AI current stuff. Reality. That's the word I was looking for. Reality. Right. My brain's obviously functioning really well. Let's get onto the third topic, our topic, which is deep analysis. There's almost 10. We'll have to explain what the almost thing is in a second. Alan, you've got a post out a couple of weeks ago. Deep analysis is in its 10th year. At the end of its 10th year will be its 10th birthday, right? So it's its 10th anniversary. This is our 10th year of operation. We're in our 10th year. In the same way that I'm in my 4th year at deep analysis. In fact, I'm halfway through my 4th year at deep analysis, and at the end of my 4th year, it will be 4 years. That's how time works. But we got ourselves a bit confused here. But that's not the focus of the post. Rather, that we can't understand calendars. It's more kind of a little celebration. Again, I'll put the details into the show notes here about why we're here, what we got right, and why telling the truth matters. And I think some of the things we've been talking about so far today underline that, right?
Well, they really do. And I mean, so when I founded Deep Analysis 10 years ago, I mean, it was just me, right? And I sat there thinking to myself, well, do you know what the world doesn't need? Another analyst firm.
Damn right.
And no, seriously, I mean, honestly. So for me, it was like drilling back on all my years as an analyst with over 451 RSG, and my time as a consultant, and just basically saying, so what does the world need? What does it need? We really very quickly settled on two things, which we've never strayed from, actually. I mean, who knew in those early days that we wouldn't stray from them? But one is, let's be focused. If we're going to say we're experts, let's actually be experts, right? We can't be experts at everything, so let's be experts at something. And let's say that in our world of unstructured data automation, I will argue that we not only can take them on, we can often win against the likes of Gartner, and obviously Forrester's a lot smaller than it was, but those were the two big ones back in the day. And we are the experts, we are the things, we are the people who do that. So that's the big one. But the other big one, and maybe the biggest one, because frankly it limits us as a company, is to tell the unvarnished truth. Right? Because I never liked, not that I ever really did, but I'm sure I unconsciously did. We're not hype merchants, right? We're not there to hype stuff. We're there to be honest brokers. And that's tough at times. People, A, don't like to hear it.
Yep.
And B, they don't spend as much money on it, right? They'll spend an awful lot of money on somebody saying, this is the next big thing.
As I said, with these stupid predictions, they normally rely on an analyst company to make the stupid predictions on their behalf.
Yeah, and look, and there's plenty out there who'll do it. There always has been, there always will be. Now, do I like that? No, I don't. But can I do anything about it? No, I can't. But at the same time, when people come to deep analysis, I hope they realize, and they do actually, we're going to tell them it's straight. Yeah, it's not meant to be aggressive. It's not meant to be snarky. It's not meant to be any of those things. It's like, maybe it sounds corny, but people are spending good money with us. I want to give them really good value. And I don't give them good value by just polishing their egos. That's just not what we're here for.
No, and if we look a little bit about where we started with this, which was a couple of posts that that you wrote and I wrote that are prompted by this crisis of confidence in the future of software, that was prompted by some vertical and horizontal specific stuff that Anthropic have been demoing to people, and we spent the last year talking about specificity, and I had to have specificity to show there's utility in AI, right? Guess what? Turns out I was right.
Exactly. That's the thing. And just to blow our own trumpet, we've been right and early, if not the first, on a lot of different things. And I'd like to think it's because we're so brilliant, but the truth is, it's really that we don't buy into the hype. Right? If something's being hyped, we'll go and validate. Well, why? Right? Is this just hot air? Is it based on something? Right? Is there something solid here? Does the world actually want to buy and use this? No, they're big questions, right? But they're basic questions that are often not asked.
Well, because our income isn't based on being a hype man, hype people, right? We are unencumbered by the need to front up the hype, right? Now this is a problem. This is what you end up. There's a lot of money to be made from fronting up bold. Let's say they call them bold predictions, right? Bold predictions. But once you've made the bold prediction, you've then got to front it up for quite a long time, long past the point when it may not be true, right? And it means that anything that you might see in your research which says the exact opposite, you either can't write or have to not focus on, even though it might be the most valuable thing for your subscribers. And that's often where the point where this flips into a point of dishonesty. You're not being an honest broker of the information you are collecting because you need to back the hype that you've already collected on.
Yeah, and if I go right back sort of 10 years, it was the start. Well, not really the start. It was already on the up, but there was the RPA thing, right? I mean, RPA was maybe not quite to the same extent, but it felt like it at the time. It was the AI boom of its time. RPA was going to do everything. It was the death of BPM. It was the death of enterprise software. It was amazing. It was this, and I believe we were the first analyst firm. I'm sure we weren't the first people, but we were the first analyst firm who just basically said this doesn't make any kind of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like Yeah, we understand what RPA is, and we actually are big fans of it because there's an awful lot of repetitive tasks, i.e. done the same way every single time. They should be automated. The perfect task, they should be automated. But this is not a replacement for these other things. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
That did not. And to be honest, in the early years of running a company, it was tough. It was tough. People did not like it. Other analyst firms didn't like it. We were just wrong. We were just contrary. But all we were doing was pointing out basic facts.
Mm-hmm.
Basic facts. This is what an RPA tool does. This is what it's claiming to do. It literally cannot do that. I mean, it literally can't. It's not neither technically or functionally capable of doing that. Why are you saying it does?
Well, in that, you've written about the RPA example and a bunch of other ones where text extracts and various other things where we had a good lead on those. So again, links to that will be in the show notes. When we're actually 10, which will be in a year's time, we will rerun this all over again. Trust me. So it's going to be a whole year-long celebration of almost being 10, being in the 10th year, and then being 10. So you're not going to miss that, and we'll recap it. And I'm sure there'll be examples from that happen in this year where we occasionally are right before maybe the crowd have noticed. But that's it. That's it for us for this time. Next time, 3 more topics, 30 minutes discussing them. My plan is to have Dan on next month because the new IDP market survey should be out by then. So it'll be an IDP special. And if we turn up next month and Dan's not here, you can complain to me and get, you made me a promise, Matt. So Dan, don't let me down. I haven't asked you yet, but you're on the pod next month. Alan, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks again for downloading or watching or wherever you're consuming this podcast. And I hope you will come along again next month. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.